Hey folks, today we're going to be covering Tinto Talks 39. This is a fantastic dev diary this week because, as Johan kind of alluded to last week, this was going to be around a reworked system in the game. And we now know what that is. That is going to be the Great Powers and Hegemony system. This was about a month ago in the dev diaries. And as Johan says in this opening part, it was really one of the few dev diaries they've done that got a pretty negative reaction. There were some things in there that people didn't really like. To be honest, out of all the ones I've covered, it's probably one of the ones I was most negative about. And I wasn't even that negative about it. I just thought some of the bonuses were a little bit weird. And like how it like structurally worked, I guess, for some parts didn't really make sense. And Johan really coming out at the beginning here and saying, yes, we heard your feedback. That is what these are for. And that's something I usually say at the end of these videos. If you ever see anything in here, I always leave a link to it in the description down below, and you can go on there and give constructive feedback. Do make it constructive. Johan really calling out here that they got some great constructive and usable feedback in those previous dev diaries, and they've used that to really make the system a lot better and really thought about how the system actually works in the game and really made some edits to it based on our feedback. So again, do make sure you do that. If you ever see anything in one of my videos or in any of the content you see around these dev diaries, do go on the forums, do give your feedback, and you can see these changes that we're going to see today. So as I said, it is going to cover a few things, and the first thing they're going to talk about here is the country ranks. So first of all, they've reworked it so that the rank for a country is now much more about the flavor and internal mechanics, moving away from the unlocking of powerful diplomatic actions such as interfere and threatening war. These are now getting moved into the Great Power system instead to make it so those are a little bit more special. There were also some modifiers that would more fit being a great power than a kingdom or an empire in name, like the power projection bonus that the rank gave. So again, they've just changed some of the bonuses and some of the actions that you can get. I really think making the great powers feel that little bit more special, I think, versus the kingdom and empire ranks. And you can see here, this is the new kingdom rank and the bonuses that it gives you. So it gives you the artist, the diplomatic range, maximum diplomats, can guarantee, can support rebels, and they've made a bunch of changes around this. Overall, I like this. I do think it makes moving up the tiers a little less impactful, but I think that's better. And then really making the great powers that extra bonus to really make that the step up that you can make. And I think that kind of fits the time period as well. Next, they're going to talk about the great power changes. So first of all, being a great power is not without its costs, and now being considered one increases the amount of gold your country needs to spend to keep up its legitimacy. Also, all great powers will now have a negative opinion of -25 with each other. So this is another fantastic change. Before, in the previous dev diary, it was pretty much just all good things. There were a few things that were a little bit annoying, but you really wanted to be a great power and you never really thought about it by the looks of it in the previous dev diary. But now Johan pointing out it's going to be more expensive. You're also going to have all the other great powers like you less. There's potential for more wars and things like that. And then on top of that, the bonuses you get now are now scaled based on how high you are in that great power ranking, with obviously the first place giving you the most bonuses. And you can see in this screenshot, they've got the Yuan dynasty that is at number 1, and the Kingdom of France is at number 5. And as you can see, the modifiers are significantly different depending on where you are in that great power list. You get a lot more benefit if you're the top, and then France, you're kind of in the middle or to the bottom. You're getting a lot less as well. So you have got that scaling reward depending on how much of a great power you actually are. Another change they've made, and this is something I think nearly everyone called out in the previous dev diary on this subject, and to be fair to them, they did say in that dev diary, this is something they had played around with, but they are going to be implementing a more fluid system for how many great powers there are. And this will be based on how many countries are close to the top country. So if somebody's really far ahead, it looks like we're going to get less great powers in total. If everyone is relatively close, you're going to get more great powers, but there is going to be a minimum and a maximum amount depending on the total number of countries in the world. So it isn't going to be like there's 50 great powers, because if everyone's great, then nobody is. And that is going to be something that's brought into this as well. So if there's only a few countries, you might only have like one great power. But if you do have, 100, 200 countries, I imagine it scales up to like 10 or something like that. Maybe a few more, but I would think maybe 10's the maximum you're going to get at any one point. And with that, that is the end of the changes in that system that is going to show off so far. The final part of this dev diary is going to be about hegemonies. There's some changes here, and then there's also some additional information on all the different types of hegemonies and the bonuses that you get. So that is additional information that we weren't given the first time round. So first of all, they've changed the hegemony system to not be unlocked by advances, but instead it will become available directly when the Age of Discovery starts. And why is that change being made? Well, it's because they're changing the hegemony system, so you no longer proclaim it yourself. It actually automatically happens if you meet the requirements. So that is why you no longer need the advance, because you had to have that, and then you could declare yourself a hegemony. Whereas now you don't actively decide to be one. It is proclaimed onto you if you are the strongest in a particular area, which I do like as well. It's less really like you just deciding, hey, we're the best. Every month, the strongest in an area the hegemony concerns will be proclaimed as that new hegemon. If there is a hegemon already, you will need to be at least 10% more powerful in that area. That's good to stop it just flicking backwards and forwards constantly, which would happen if it was literally like you need to be 1 point better than somebody else. You have to have that little built-in amount, so you're going to hit that, and then whoever you replace can't immediately take it back off you because they'd have to be 10% more powerful than you. So that is a good way to balance this, just switching over all the time. So for the military hegemon, if France had 200,000 soldiers, then Sweden needs at least 240,000 soldiers to become the replacement, or reduce the French army to be smaller in a way. You will not lose your hegemony if you lose a war though. So it looks like you can like lose a war, but as long as you don't get all your soldiers wiped out, you wouldn't lose the military hegemony. You don't just automatically lose it through loss of warfare or something like that. It is the actual requirements for that hegemony that need to be met by somebody else, which, as they say here, you could do that as Sweden. You could go to war with France and you could just wipe out a bunch of their army, and then you would naturally replace them because they don't have the troops needed. Whereas if it was a very close war and you beat France, but they kept most of their soldiers, they would still keep that hegemony because they'd have the soldier requirements. So hopefully that makes sense. Another major change they've made is that you can now hold multiple hegemonies, but there are of course some drawbacks to being able to do this. Of course, all of the countries distrust the hegemony, so for every hegemony you hold, you'll get a -20 opinion from every country and a 20% extra impact on aggressive expansion. There is also an increase to expected court costs and a monthly prestige gain as well. I like this. I like that you can hold multiple of these, so you can be an economic hegemony whilst also being a naval one. Think of somewhere like Spain or England or something. You can hold multiples of these, but as it says here, you are going to get those negative opinion and cost modifiers stacking up pretty quick, and then you're pretty much always going to be a great power as well. So if you think you have 2 of these, that'd be -40 opinion, plus the modifier for being a great nation. People aren't going to like you that much. They're going to see you at the top and think like, I want to knock those down. So you are going to have to be careful with this, unless you're just so powerful you don't care. But you are going to have to be careful getting these. And as you can no longer choose to get them, it is something that might happen to you even if you don't want it to, which I think is cool. That brings out some immersive gameplay. There's going to be times when you're going to get these by accident, and then you're going to have to deal with that as well. On top of this, they've also made a great change, especially as you can have multiples of these. And one of the major bits of feedback was that these were just stacking modifiers, and like the best just got better. If you were one of these hegemonies, you would pretty much always keep it unless something crazy happened to you or another realm just played really well and somehow overtook you. They've listened to that feedback and they've made the following changes. So they've removed the system where hegemonies got more powerful the longer you held them. This was one of the major bits of feedback people had, because the longer you had them, the more powerful you got, and then it was pretty difficult for somebody else to replace you as that hegemony. This is great, removing those, so it is just a flat amount however long you've held it, and you don't keep getting better and better. They've also removed most of the stacking modifiers and having them only giving you 1 bonus each. However, instead, each hegemony will now give you 2 unlocks, 1 unique cabinet action each and 1 unique diplomatic action, which can be used whilst you hold on to that position. And you can see in this next screenshot, this is an economic hegemony, and the Yuan dynasty has this. We won't cover this too much here because Johan's going to go into a bit of detail about each different type of hegemony. But as you can see, this reduces unit food consumption, force divert trade, and reduces paperwork as well. Those are the 2 additional unlocks that they were just talking about. But as I said, Johan's going to cover each one of these in a second. You can see they are far, far, far and away the top person at the beginning of the game. And then obviously the Europeans especially will catch up as you progress through your campaigns. And then as I was just mentioning, Johan's going to break down each one of these hegemonies now and give us the bonuses that it provides. And he also does mention that there are 2 additional ones that weren't covered the first time they covered hegemonies. So the first one is economic, which is the one we just saw in that screenshot. This, as we've just seen, reduces the food units consumed, which will help you over campaigns. They can use the diplomatic action divert trade, which forces a non-greater power country to give up part of their merchant capacity in all markets they are present in. This cannot be done to anyone that has their own market though, but this forced trade cannot be broken for 10 years unless a war breaks out between the 2 people involved. The cabinet action this hegemon gets is reduced paperwork. This increases the production efficiency in a whole area. That's pretty good. So what is an area? An area is a group of provinces, and a province is a group of locations. I do like that Johan's called that out. People like myself do get confused, especially if you come from Crusader Kings. what these different meanings are. So yeah, an area is a group of provinces and a province is a group of locations. So you can think of locations a bit like a barony in Crusader Kings. A province is like a duchy, and an area is like a kingdom, if you want to kind of think of it loosely that way. Production efficiency is a powerful modifier that directly impacts the output of buildings without increasing its input requirements. So yeah, you basically just get bonus stuff for no extra input, so that is a pretty decent bonus, to be honest. The next one is naval hegemony. This is the great power that has the most heavy ships of all great powers. Their bonus is a 10% less naval damage taken. They can use the diplomatic action force embargoes, which makes the target a non-greater power embargo another country that you have chosen. An embargoed country cannot trade in the market they are embargoed in, and their locations will no longer be in that market, both of which is non-ideal. I would agree with that. This forced embargo cannot be broken again for 10 years unless the two involved people go to war with each other, so the same as all of them by the looks of it. This hegemon also has the cabinet action naval focus, which increases the maritime growth and harbour suitability of all ports in an area. That is a fantastic bonus, actually, especially if you're doing a lot of trade and naval things. Obviously makes sense that it would boost those, but that is a pretty decent bonus. The next one is the military hegemony. This is the great power with the biggest army of all great powers. Their bonus is 10% cheaper war score costs. They have the violate sovereignty diplomatic action. This is probably the most requested feature ever by any warmongering player. Okay, let's see what it is. And allows you to force a military and food access on any non-greater power country for 6 months. This means that you can pretty much ignore all neutrality and make sure your army is well fed as you march to another theatre. There is a slight drawback that the country who you're forced through will dislike you and get a casus belli on you. That is probably a pretty highly requested feature. I actually quite like that. That is pretty good. You're so powerful, you can literally go to another country and say, I'm marching my men through your land, I'm going to take food as I do it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Obviously, they're not going to like the fact you've done it. I do like that they get the casus belli on you to kind of go to war against you, but let's be honest, how often are they going to use that? You're a great power. It's unlikely they'll ever go to war against you, but it would be a cool interaction if they did, if they can get some alliances and go to war with you and get some kind of reparations from you, I would think. And then their cabinet action that they unlock is soldiers as workforce. This gives you faster construction speed in an area. This impacts roads, buildings, and RGOs. So this can be very useful to get more barracks, forts, and iron mines quickly for a war machine. So this really does allow you to get ready for wars quicker and also just strengthen your lands whilst you are the military hegemony, which is pretty decent. And then those obviously carry on. You're still going to have those. Even if you lose this ability, you're still going to have those buildings once you do lose it. So that's really a long-term benefit you could make use of if you don't think you're going to keep this rank for very long. The next one is the cultural hegemony. This is the first of the new ones, and this is granted to the great power with the highest cultural influence. Their bonus is 25% growth in cultural tradition growth, so an additional growth modifier. They can then use the diplomatic action force court language change. This forces the target to obviously change their court language to match yours, and then this would further boost your culture as other places are speaking your language. And then very similar to the previous ones, won't change for 10 years unless a war breaks out between the two people. This hegemony can also use the cabinet action assimilate area, which allows you to assimilate populations in an entire area at once, which is a few times more powerful than the promote culture cabinet action that can only be used at a province at a time. Is this too good? Maybe, but I quite like it, especially if you're taking over a lot of land and then you're also the most culturally powerful realm. It does kind of make sense, I guess, that you could go and convert a whole bunch of people into your culture because you're just such a powerful culture. You know, people just see you as so good they would convert over to your culture in an area. So I don't know. I guess this is the most gamified out of the previous ones, but it still kind of makes sense in respect to how the system works. And then the last one, which is the second of the new ones, this is the diplomatic hegemony, and this is granted to the great power with the highest diplomatic reputation. Their bonus is 30% higher impact from their improving relations ability. They can use the diplomatic action influence country, which increases trust and opinion in a target non-greater power country. And then their cabinet action is diplomatic cause, which allows this hegemony to dramatically increase their diplomatic capacity whilst also gaining more diplomats each month. So that's actually a pretty decent bonus as well. It doesn't look as fancy as the previous ones, but it's going to allow you to further improve your diplomatic control over places or your influence around the map. And then the last screenshot they're going to show is the Great Powers UI. This has had some improvements over what it looked like previously. The more eagle-eyed of you might notice, they actually made the change that I requested when the last one came out. I even did some mock screenshots and put them on Twitter and places like that. They've switched the leader and the flag around. So in the original one, the flag was first, then it was the leader, and then it was all the other flags and the names. I originally said I thought it would look better this way around because then all the flags are kind of together and the leader is on the left-hand side. I think it just flows nice this way. I know some people disagreed with that, but it looks like at least the game studio kind of agreed with me. Now, it wasn't probably down to what I said, but I'm going to believe it is, at least for now. I think this is a nicer layout, and as you can see, these are the new 5 great powers at the start of the game. Now, this may change before the game comes out. I have seen some people say, like, why is the Shogunate now 3rd? It wasn't even in the last one. I think this will change before the game actually gets released, as other features get added, and balancing happens to numbers and things like that. But currently, as Johan says here, these are the top 5 nations when you start your game as it is currently set up. And with that, that is the end of the dev diary for this week. Again, just fantastic to see them making these changes based on the feedback we've given and really listening to what we say and made changes that make sense to them. And they obviously haven't done everything people asked for. As I've said in previous videos, I don't want them to make the game that players want. I kind of want them to make the game they want and then have players have little tweaks here or there that make sense. And Johan's saying the ideas you had were better than what we had, and we've made those changes, which is great to see. Next week, he says he's going to be talking about government reforms, how they work, and take a look at the types that there are in the game. So that'll be a fantastic dev diary. And then I would think maybe we're getting close to the Christmas break, so maybe we'll have another fancy one before the Christmas break, and then he'll be back in the new year, I would think, with some new ones. And then as we know, I think he said like February, March, we're going to start getting the flavor dev diaries. And before too long, I guess we'll get an official announcement of the game. It'll probably be at PDXCon, I would imagine, but we'll see early next year, I would think. And with that, that is going to be the end of the video this week. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new here. I cover EU5, all the dev diaries, all the news, and I cover Crusader Kings in a very similar manner. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.